I will need to really move on to Dr. Ponga just so that he also has a sufficient amount of time to make his own presentation. And then I hope we'll have a little bit of time at the very end to be able to conclude this in a way that makes sense as a whole.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, the moderator and my other panelists. Yeah, my presentation is on this topic, beyond silos, harnessing multi-stakeholder alliances. Use the case of Kenya. So I just want to mention maybe from the onset that silos is I know it's an English word, yes, but it's a concept that has been coined by the civil society to denote an actor acting or alone or acting in isolation, right? So it's like you're having food in a cannery and then you're not sharing that food with other people. So that kind of knowledge as an actor in the evaluation ecosystem, and you are not using it or sharing it with the others, then you cannot consume it alone, that food, and it will get rotten. So you need to share with other actors the knowledge. Good. I'm not going to go the introduction. I think the moderator did well in introducing me. Thank you for that. Yeah. I just want to mention that presentation will be based on three main questions. One, how can we effectively balance the diverse interests, priorities, and methodologies of different stakeholders while maintaining a cohesive and efficient national evaluation system? The second about is what mechanisms can be implemented to ensure equitable participation and decision-making power among all stakeholders in a multi-sector evaluation alliance. And lastly, we'll talk about some of the possible ways in which the multi-stakeholder alliances can enhance the adaptability and resilience of national evaluation systems to address the emerging challenges. So apart from these three questions, I'll just set to answer for this presentation. As a preamble, I will talk about the main stakeholders in the Kenyan evaluation ecosystem. Then I will also mention briefly the role of each stakeholder in the evaluation ecosystem. And then we share the benefits of having a multi-stakeholder engagement, both for the government and the other stakeholders in the evaluation ecosystem. Oh, yeah. Good. So the main stakeholders in the evaluation ecosystem in Kenya, and not only in Kenya, like in many other countries, the main stakeholders are the government, the civil society, the private sector. We have the VOPES. For those not in evaluation practice, the VOPES are the voluntary organizations for professional evaluation. So we have other actors beyond these four, and I'll mention them briefly. One, for the government, I think we have the government ministries, departments, and agencies. Some countries call them the MDS. And their main role in the evaluation ecosystem is to influence the policy and the regulatory frameworks. They also create the enabling environment for implementation of projects as well as evaluating the project. For the civil society, their main role is in advocacy. They advocate for inclusive development, as well as ensuring that the benefits of development reach the rural communities or the local communities. So the civil societies have been known as the grassroots people. They're the people who operate at the grassroots level. Then we have the private sector, and their main role is, these are business people now. So their main role is to invest in technologies. They also play on investing in evaluation development, and this is crucial in this multi-stakeholder engagement. Then we have the VOPES, the Voluntary Organizations for Professional Evaluation. And their main role is promoting evaluation standards, ethical guidelines, as well as providing training and professional development for evaluators. Apart from VOPES, I should have mentioned at the start that I wear two hats. I open the space as an evaluation practitioner, and I also wear the hat of an academic. So apart from the VOPES, we also have the academia, and the academia, their main role in this multi-stakeholder engagement is to build capacity operating the supply side, and apart from building capacity of evaluation practitioners, they also or evidence-informed decision-making. Then we have the international organizations, and their main role is to shape global and national policies. They provide financial assistance, as well as emphasize on alignment with the global standards. So the main benefits of this multi-stakeholder engagement, these benefits are mainly to ensure that the diverse interests that we talked about, the priorities and the methodologies of the different stakeholders are effectively managed and balanced, while maintaining a cohesive and efficient national evaluation system. So the main one for the government side is the greater engagement with stakeholder interests, thereby ensuring the services are delivered in collaboration with stakeholders and also provide outcomes which meet community needs. And for the other stakeholders that we just talked about, the main benefits for them are in two levels. One, in improved access to decision-making processes, resulting in the delivery of more efficient and responsive services, and also the early identification of areas of synergy between the stakeholders and the government work, thus encouraging integrated and comprehensive solutions to complex policy issues. In terms of balancing the diverse interest, priorities, and methodologies, the first one I think is that we have clear guidance, governance, and coordination mechanism. This is key in terms of balancing the diverse interests. And in the Kenyan context, we have the Monitoring and Evaluation Directorate, and I know most countries also have this. The one in Kenya acts as the central champion that coordinates the entire national evaluation system, thereby aligning the diverse interests of the class around common goals and processes. In the Kenyan system, we have the National Integrated Monitoring and Evaluation System at the national level. This was established in 2004 to provide a centralized mechanism for coordinating and overseeing monitoring and evaluation across the public sector. And we have a devolved system of governance in Kenya, where we have the national government and then 47 devolved systems, which we call the county system. So for the county system, we have their county integrated monitoring and evaluation system called the CIMES, which feeds into the NEMES. Then, in terms of shared evaluation standards, Kenya developed Kenya National Evaluation Policy, which was developed in 2022. This national policy framework outlines the minimum standards and guidelines for evaluations across the public sector in Kenya. Then, in terms of evaluation capacity development, the government of Kenya, working in collaboration with the other stakeholders and especially the international donor community, developed a monitoring and evaluation curriculum for public and private universities. And this was piloted in the 2011 with the help of UNICEF Kenya. And lastly, in terms of evaluation, use, and learning, in the Kenyan context, our parliamentarians formed something, parliamentarians for evaluation, formed an entity known as the Parliamentary Caucus on Evidence-Informed Decision-Making, which tries to bridge the gap between the supply and the demand for evidence-informed decision-making. Then our parliamentarians are also members of the African Parliamentarian Network, APNOD. Then they are also members of the Global Parliamentarians Forum on Development Evaluation, as well as members of the SDG Kenya platform. In terms of ensuring equitable participation and decision-making power, one, there's the collaborative process, and in this case, NIMS at the national level, which established a national steering council. And this national steering council is the highest policy advisory body, and it brings together the national government through the Council of Governors, brings together the controller of budget, the civil society, private sector, and other development partners. In terms of capacity development, the government of Kenya initiated something known as the Monitoring, Evaluation and Learning Week. This was started in 2009 in collaboration with the National VOP in Kenya then and the United Nations system. And these has really promoted monitoring and evaluation best practices. And I'm happy to report that so many countries have came to Kenya for benchmarking, and some of those countries have already started their own monitoring and evaluation weeks. We have a Sri Lanka case, which benchmarked from Kenya. We have Uganda, which also benchmarked from Kenya. Just recently, they also have their Uganda Monitoring and Evaluation Week. We also have Tanzania, our neighbors, which also have their Monitoring and Evaluation Week. Then, in terms of effective accountability mechanisms, the development of the SDG Multi-Stakeholder Forum, if you see that, that's the strategy for the Multi-Stakeholder Forum, that picture. Yeah, it was geared towards providing direction in stakeholder engagement and communication using accountable and transparent processes. Lastly, just to mention about some of mechanisms that we can use to enhance the adaptability and resilience of national evaluation systems. One, we need to create more spaces for reflection, learning, and innovation, and thereby leverage diverse perspectives and expertise to develop creative solutions to new challenges. Two, there's need for adaptive and transformative partnerships. In this particular case, we develop a shared understanding of resilience concepts as a foundation for partnerships. You cannot come into a partnership if you're not in agreement about the key concepts that inform your engagement. There's the need for basket funding, where we suggest that we need to mobilize diverse resources and capabilities and enable a wide range of actors to deliver adaptation resources and support. This will limit this element of duplicating resources and activities. And lastly, in Kenya, we have a National Gender and Equality Commission. So we need to revamp the role of the organization, and this will help the government in addressing power imbalances to ensure that all the stakeholders in this multi-stakeholder forum contribute effectively, and we build trust and strengthen relationships across the different stakeholders. So those are some of the pictures of stakeholder engagements. You can see the last M&D week that we had in Kenya was in 2022, and then I think in 2023 it was held virtually, I think because of resources. And the tragedy of tragedies was that in this year, the government cut the funding for monitoring and evaluation function by 100%. So I'm yet to discuss with my director to find out how they are going to operate with zero funding. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening.
Well, thank you so much to everybody. We're actually at the end of the session right now, so we don't necessarily have a lot of time. But the session before us went a little bit overboard, so I take the liberty to do the same here. But I would like to open up the floor for questions, especially for our last two speakers. I see one hand up there, so if you could have a microphone, and then over here.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. My name is Lina Nyamchonya from the Ministry of Finance and National Planning in Zambia. My question or concern or unhappiness goes to the last presentation. I think I wanted to ask at first, before you made your last comment, that funding was cut. I think I wanted to ask where the national planning. But after you mentioned the last point that funds were cut, so I'm just wondering now, where should we place the entity that coordinates M&D in a country so that it has delivered to coordinate everybody and also on funds? Because that point, I think, just says something about that point on the cutting of resources. I think it's very worrying.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm Hassan Rakuta from Madagascar, from the Presidency Office. My question is, even there are, excuse me, even though we have many actors in the ecosystem, the decision maker, the most is the government. How do you create the buy-in to launch evaluation, to promote evaluation in your country? Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Saidu Amara, a director at the National Monitoring and Evaluation Directorate Office of the President, Sierra Leone. The second speaker, if you look at the slide where you have the SDGs, I mean, at the top you have the types of evaluations, and I saw the second, third, and fourth rows, they are kind of linked. I don't know whether the first row is, I did not send a linkage to the second, third, and fourth rows. For my brother from Kenya, I feel threatened, actually. I mean, with the beautiful presentation, especially the M&E week, I just wanted to take that to Parliament as well. But having formed in 2009, the last M&E week was in 2022, that is 2 years ago, and the funding is now 0%. I'm wondering how this can be replicated with your experience. I mean, what are the challenges? You can share that with us maybe outside of here. And also from that time when the M&E week was established, how many M&E weeks in total have you actually implemented? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks so much for the beautiful questions from the African continent. One, where is the office that manages the monitoring and evaluation function domiciled in Kenya? Yeah, at the moment, we have something called the Monitoring and Evaluation Directorate, an entity known as the Monitoring and Evaluation Directorate, MED, that I referred to in my presentation, and MED presently is domiciled in the Ministry of Finance and Planning. But I wish to mention that when the Monitoring and Evaluation Directorate was most active was when we had the Prime Minister's office in Kenya before we changed the constitution. And this also says something about the leadership. The function was coordinated directly from the Prime Minister's office. And if you can look at best practices in Africa, we have South Africa, where the monitoring and evaluation function is domiciled in the office of the the presidency. When you go to Uganda, it is domiciled in the Prime Minister's office. If you go to Benin, I think it's also in the Prime Minister's office or the President's office. So the place where the M&D function is domiciled should be at the highest decision-making office in the land. Will make it very effective. Two, how do you create the buy-in? Yes. And I mentioned that in 2009, when we had, that's when we had our first VOPE, the National Monitoring, the Monetary Organization for Professional Evaluation. That VOPE started engaging with the UNICEF as a donor, yes, and could not enter directly into government because at that particular time, the government viewed the civil society as antagonists, people who are there to cause chaos. You see, but the moment the OPE started working with UNICEF, UNICEF started bringing them closer to the government. And that's when we even talked about the 2011, when we started piloting the M&D curriculum, which is now being implemented in so many universities in Kenya. Then, what are the challenges with the funding and what's the way forward? I think it has always been good. That's why we share the best practices. The relationship has always been good, but the only challenge that came in this time was, if you may have been following the news from Kenya, we had some demonstrations and riots as a result of the finance bill, which was seen as unpopular. So for the government to see itself as responding to the needs of the people, they said, you must cut funding. So interestingly, they just looked at the area where they can cut funding, and they just saw that M&D is not an area which so we are yet now as a civil society to tell that it is really necessary, more necessary than even, because you'll be injecting money into the other development interventions, and if you don't do the monitoring and evaluation, you will not even know whether your money is being used effectively or not. Thank you.